How to experience God. Do you believe it's possible to experience God? I think most people would say no, but I've learned some things that I'm going to share with you today on how you can experience God. Now, I know I may have lost some of you right there, but I hope not. I hope you'll stay with me, because what I'm going to share with you is really powerful and really profound. So why am I doing this presentation? Well, we are at a time where faith in this country is at all-time record lows. The number of people that identify themselves as a non, meaning no religious affiliation, is at all-time highs, and especially in the young community. 45% of young people, meaning under 35, have no religious affiliation, no belief in God. 50 years ago, it used to be 5% of the people. And it's been growing and growing and growing. And as the non-category, meaning no religious belief, has grown and grown, you know what else has grown? Hate, fear, and violence. But very few people are willing to recognize what is so obvious as far as that direct correlation. I've made this journey of starting at basically at 18 years old, wondering, is God real? I'm going to show you the journey I've made and how you can actually prove beyond a shadow of a doubt and remove all doubt whether God is real, whether God exists. And the most powerful way is to actually experience God. It has taken me this lifetime to learn this formula. Now, I'm getting near the end of my journey. I'm 62 years old now. My name is Mark Prather. I'm founder of Mark One Mortgage and Mark One Real Estate Wealth Academy. I've written 3 books. One of the books is called Wisdom for Your Daily Life. Now, I share this with you because this book was the result of, at age 49, I had a massive heart attack. It caused significant heart damage. I was put on the heart transplant list. I didn't know frankly, I didn't think I was going to live very much longer, and I wasn't able to work for quite a long time. And when you go on the heart transplant list, there's generally only 2 ways you come off the heart transplant list. One is with a new heart, or 2 is you die in the process waiting. I experienced one of many extreme miracles where my heart actually healed itself. And I was able to go back to work. And after, this was in July 31st of 2007 was when I had this massive heart attack. And I learned what post-traumatic stress syndrome is like, that PTSD. The impact when you have a really violent, painful, near-death experience. I mean, you get rattled really significantly. And after I started going through this process of waiting for this new heart, and I started to pray, and I started praying for wisdom. And the wisdom, meaning I learned how the Holy Spirit works in our lives. And I started writing these things down, and I started putting them on Facebook, and I started getting these inspirational comments, and people were responding to them. And so the typical response was, hey, you should Mark, put this into a book. So I did. My daughter and she helped me with this. She's really more of a writer than I am. But these are inspirations. And so in this book, Wisdom for Your Daily Life, I don't want you to look at this wisdom from me, because it's really not from me. These are inspirational wisdom messages direct from the Holy Spirit that I received. And it's really the first evidence of God. But my point to you is this is not about me, this is about you. And how do you experience God? And the first thing I would say is pray for wisdom. The next thing I want to share with you is if you're a devout believer, then it's easy to get you on board. If you're on the fence, not so much. And if you're a rejecter, then it doesn't matter what I say. But so if you are in that place of doubt, and a lot of people are, even believers, are in that place of doubt. pray for wisdom. But I'm going to tell you, here's what I've learned about when the wisdom comes. It comes when your mind is quiet. See, here's where the Holy Spirit comes from. It's through your subconscious. But your subconscious has to be quiet so that it can receive the messages. When is your mind most quiet? Well, for me, if you're like me, where you're just like busy, go, go, go all the time, your subconscious is almost never quiet. But here's what I've learned is the Holy Spirit messages will come to you, but they come to you when your mind is quiet. And for me, that's early in the mornings. The Bible refers to dreams. That's another time when your mind is quiet. And you will have the Holy Spirit. So you'll get communications and information and guidance. And that's really the most important, the guidance that you'll get through your dreams, but especially when your mind's quiet. And as I said, in my experience, it's been the mornings. So is there anything greater than experience God? I don't think so. I think that's as good as it gets. But if you're in that place of kind of like hoping, you're like, I don't know, I'm going to show you the path to eliminate that doubt. Does God exist? I can tell you, at 18, I didn't know, but I was committed to finding out. I'm going to show you, and this is why I'm doing this presentation, is what I've learned over my life journey. I didn't learn in a year, 2 years. It's been over a 40-year journey, and it's been the most difficult journey. But I've learned some powerful things, and I'm doing this video because what I've learned and experienced is supernatural, it's miraculous, and in large part, this is for my legacy, really, to my children, and hopefully they'll have children. And so we'll answer. I'm going to show you how you can answer this question, does God exist? Next is what is possible for your life. See, if God exists, then all things are possible, right? I'm going to show you how to prove, because there's nothing I can say that's going to prove to you that God exists. But you can prove God exists. And I'm going to show you the formula. See, everything in life, there's a formula. And if you study the Bible and you study God and you study Christ, the Eucharist and that whole process is a formula. Everything in life is about formulas. I like to say life's like a recipe. If you know the recipe, it's easy. Well, God has revealed the recipe. I'm going to share with you what that recipe is. See, you can prove that God exists. Absolutely, 100%, beyond a shadow of doubt. One way is scientific, and that was one of the supernatural or miraculous events that was revealed to me. I'll share with you that at the end. But the best way is your personal experience with God. So what do you believe about God? Do you reject God? Are you lukewarm about God? Or do you have radical trust in God? Getting to this stage of radical trust is the most difficult thing I can't even express to you how hard it has been to reach the state that I'm in now. It's taken me a whole lifetime. It was incredibly difficult. And the heart attack and the heart damage was one of the significant challenges to overcome. Now, why is it important for some to reject God? Now, if you're a God rejecter and you're watching this, then I'm ecstatic that you're a God rejecter watching this. Because most God rejectors won't. But if you're a God rejecter, first, I want to tell you, I get it. When we're kids growing up, we can't wait to move out because we get sick of our parents telling us what to do. We want to be free. We do not want to be accountable to anyone. And when we become 18, I moved out of my parents' house at 18 because I hated being accountable. So that's one of the key reasons for God. You don't want to be accountable. But I want you to think about, where does that come from? Accountability comes from pride and ego. And the idea of being watched 24/7 is like, I don't want any part of that. I don't want anybody watching me 24/7, and I sure as heck don't want to be accountable. So I totally understand being a God rejecter. Next is I want what I want, meaning I want to do what I want to do. God has rules. Well, here's the way I like to say it. God has standards. He has standards. Now, though, you've heard the Ten Commandments. You've heard Jesus say, love your neighbor as yourself. Those are standards. Most God rejectors don't want part of standards. It's like, look, I don't want to be accountable, and I want to set my own standards, and I want to do it my way. Or third is life's unfair. And yeah, it is. And you don't understand why it's unfair. Well, as we go through this, I'll explain to you why life is unfair. See, our journey here on this planet, it goes like that. I mean, it just blows my mind that, from 18 to 62, 44 years feels like a handful of years. And when I talk to my friends that I went to high school with, our connection is rekindled in seconds, if not, it's just seconds to minutes. It's because even though our body is aged, the soul of who we are never ages. But when we go through this journey, life is unfair. But there's a reason behind it. And when you pray for the wisdom, and I can share with you as we get into this, the reasons why life is unfair. Because it's really not about this life. This life is one big test. But if you're a God rejecter, I got nothing but love for you. I just want you to know I understand. I get it. It's hard. But you need to understand that what a foolish call that is. Because your life here on this planet is super short. And you're trading doing it my way for 5 minutes in time versus following some loving standards and creating eternal time. And here's what God rejectors are really missing. First, we all want to be happy, right? We want our life journey to be as good as we can make it. We want to enjoy it. We want to have fun. We want to experience love. We want the deepest level of happiness we can possibly have. And the key to that is standards. It's values. And God's standards and God's values are what bring that deeper level of happiness. No standards, no values, no accountability just alienates from people. And that's really an ego pull. So we have this constant pull. And here's the struggle between the ego of selfishness and the pull of God's love. The other big thing that rejectors are missing is access to the greatest power and intelligence in the universe. The truth of the matter is, we're just really not that smart in the scheme of things. As human beings, we're really not that smart. And life is really difficult. It just never gets easier. Whether it's financial struggle, family struggle, relationships, health, it just never gets easy. It's a constant struggle. But what if you could tap into a source where you could have access to infinite intelligence and access to a power so beyond you? Why would you not want to do that? I'm going to show you how you can access infinite intelligence and infinite power. And I mean how you can access it in a powerful and profound way. See, being lukewarm on God, this is, you can see from Revelation, because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth. Now, this message is not for the rejectors. This is for the believers that are lukewarm, which is probably most of us. If you are lukewarm, here's, again, you're not rejecting God. But what you're saying is your life, and it's not really the words. When I say what you're saying, we are what we do. Your actions, the choices you make, are revealing that you are lukewarm on God. And the reason is because you don't want to be accountable. You want to do what you want to do. And again, I get that. That's just part of being human. But God has standards. And those standards are not negotiable. And the point is, if you're creating this kind of delusion by simply saying, well, I believe in God, but I'm going to do it my way, and be lukewarm, I would check this verse out, because what does this tell you? Jesus said this. I didn't say this. Because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth. Now, I can tell you what that means to me. If I spit you out of my mouth, what does that mean? Is I no longer want you in me. I'm not letting you, I'm not internalizing you anymore. And do you think I'm going to let you back in? Not easily. You better get on your knees and really pray for some serious forgiveness. Now, radical trust in God. The key to experiencing God is radical trust. I'm going to explain how you develop this radical trust. But radical trust, we hear the word faith. But what does faith really mean? Faith means trust. But what level of trust? Who do you trust? How many people do you trust with your life? How many people do you trust with your money? How many people would you give your password to your bank accounts? Not very many, right? That's radical trust. How many people do you have radical trust with your life? I will explain how we can develop this process, because it is not easy. As I said, it didn't happen in months or years, more like decades, like probably pushing 40 years to get to this place of not just faith, but I'm talking radical trust. There is nothing more difficult in life than getting to a place where you are literally willing to lose your life for God. Can you find God? But from there you will seek the Lord your God, and you will find him. If you search after him with all your heart and with all your soul. I'm going to share with you another verse. That they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him. And here's why I'm sharing these verses with you. When I was a kid growing up, we did not have God in our house. My father basically had spent his whole life being what he called kind of an agnostic. Most of his life said, I don't believe in God. But I won't say definitively he's not there. So I'll just call me an agnostic. That's him. We went to church once as a family, and only because we were trying to appease somebody. My dad was trying to appease somebody. But anyway, we didn't have God in our house. We did not go to church. Never looked at the Bible, never prayed, none of that stuff. It wasn't until I was 18 with some really close friends in high school that I was invited to go to church, and I started asking this question about, does God exist? And here's what seemed obvious to me. And I say it that way because I don't really understand why this isn't so obvious to everyone. But what seemed obvious to me is this answer of, is God real? Like everything depends on that, right? If there's no God, then I get to do it my way one time. I get to be as selfish as I want to be one time, and then when it's over, it's over. But if God is real, then it's a game changer. Everything is different. So the big question is, when I was going to church with these friends and asking this question, does God exist? I said, I need to know the answer to this question. This is not like a question that I can just live hanging out there. Like, well, I'll just put it on ignore. Or just fake it and say, yeah, I believe. I said, no, I need to know the answer to this. I need to know beyond a shadow of a doubt. I need to do whatever it takes to find out if God is real. If he really exists, I need to get to the answer of that. So how do I get to the answer of that? How do I prove beyond a shadow of doubt, absolutely positively, that God is real and does exist? Well, I started looking in the Bible for clues. Clues to proving whether he exists or it's all a sham. Now, look at these verses. I'm going to read this first one again. But from there you will seek the Lord your God, and you will find him. If you search after him with all your heart and with all your soul, you will find him. Does that sound vague to you? Does that sound like a maybe? It sounds vague to me. It sounds really crystal clear. Here's what I realized. Either that is true or it is a lie. Right? Either it's true or it's a lie. So here's the commitment I made to me. I said, God, if you're out there, I'm going to find you. I am coming after you. I am going to find you. Your book here, this book, is this real or is this all the greatest orchestrated scam in the history of mankind? I'm getting to the bottom of it, and if it takes me to the time I'm 88 years old on my deathbed to prove that God is not findable, then at least when I die, I know that I got to the answer. That's how committed I was. And still, I have been committed to finding, to proving. If you find him, it says, God, you will find him. Well, I've found him. And I'm going to show you how you can find him and remove all doubt. I'm going to repeat that. I'm going to show you can find him and remove all doubt because it changes everything. So what is possible for your life? What is possible with God is all things are possible. Now, you've heard that. Probably if you're a believer, you've certainly heard it. And if you're not a believer, you're on the fence, you go, well, yeah, I mean, logically that makes sense. If you can create the earth, the moon, the sun, and the stars, and you can create life, then yeah, I guess everything's possible, right? Yeah, well, everything's possible. But what is possible with God for you? Here's the sad part. Is 90% of you will not realize what your life potential is. You will not realize what is possible because you have no faith. Your faith is based on, the most important thing to most people is their eyes, what they can see. You have more than just vision. You have a mind, you have reason. I'm going to show you how all things are possible and how your life, and not just your happiness, and what is possible in your journey. But you got to get past just relying on your eyes. See, let me give you an example. Do you believe in the wind? Can you see the wind? You cannot see the wind, right? Now you could say, well, I can't see the wind, but I can see the ramifications or the consequences of powerful wind. That's the way God works. You will not physically see him or the Holy Spirit, but you will see the ramifications of his power and his guidance. And you will hear that guidance in through your subconscious. But I'm going to show you how to access that. And the power and the ramifications over and over and over. And the elevation as your trust goes up. As that radical trust, which means faith, when I say radical trust, I'm saying faith. As it grows, your faith grows, it's really, trust is growing, and now as you get to the radical level of trust, absolute trust, the ramifications of like the wind happen, and I mean, I don't know how many miracles, how many supernatural events are going to take for you to get to where I'm at, but it took me quite a few. So why did God create you? To have a loving relationship. It's really about just this one-on-one loving relationship. A lot of people look at life and they think it's really complicated. I used to think it was really complicated. God is super simple. Life is super simple. if you really understand where God's coming from, if you understand his wisdom, life is simple. To have a loving relationship. But to help him save it, the second thing is to help him save as many eternal lives as possible. That's why we're here. This time here is a testing ground. Let me ask you a question. Let's say you were going to have someone spend eternity living with you in your house. You're going to have someone live in your house for eternity. Would you have standards? Well, of course you'd have standards, right? But what would those standards be? How many people have you met in your lifetime that you would be willing to commit to them for all eternity to have them live in your house? What would those standards look? And how many people have you met in your lifetime that you said, you know what, I love this person, and they can be at my dinner table forever. They can watch TV with me forever. They can be in their own room forever. They're somebody that I'm going to pal around with forever. How many of those people have you met? That's a tall order, right? That's what our journey is about. Does what you want from life conflict with God's purpose for your life? So what do you believe is your purpose? This is where most of us get screwed up, including me. I was really screwed up on this. You see, we have our goals. When we're young, it's like, well, what's my purpose? What's my career path? How much money am I going to have? What are all my goals? We have all our goals in mind of what we want for our life. But are our goals in line with God's goals, meaning God's values, God's standards? See, this is where most of us get screwed up, is we want what we want, and if God doesn't give us what we want, then he's not a loving God. Right? That's the mindset. And then we go, well, this is just unfair. I was born in poverty. Well, my family wasn't educated. Well, I dealt with all of those things. And then I wanted to prove that I could be somebody. But here's what God wants us about. Our journey is really about molding who we are from and this is really the root problem we have in our world today, selfishness, is molding us from being selfish people, all about us, to being loving people, which means to sacrifice for other people. And that's the journey about being molded. But being molded is not easy because we're changing what we value. So the question I want you to ask, if you were to write down what your values are, let's say write down your 5 most important values, what would those look like? For me, when I was a young man, it was number 1 was money. The things I valued most were money and materialistic, and it was all status. Is that aligned with God's values? No. And I'm going to tell you the truth of it is I suffered a lot, and all of that selfishness basically got squeezed out of me over the decades. So what does God value? A loving relationship with you first and foremost. And number 2, loving treatment of children. That's what Jesus said. Love God first and love everyone else. Is that complicated? That's not complicated. Life is not complicated. Our life shouldn't be complicated. God's not complicated. This is really simple stuff. What makes it complicated is when you take 2 separate selfish people and they can't make it work because they refuse. They absolutely refuse, and this is the God rejectors. They refuse to compromise on their selfishness. It's like, look, we're doing it my way. And we have a country that's being torn apart at the threads right now because we have all these people that are tearing at the fabric of the country because they're selfish. It's like the question isn't that they're not asking, what can I give you? What do I have to offer you? What love do I have for you? Nobody asking that question. What's the question they're asking? Is what is mine? What do I get to keep? That's the question they're asking. And that is where you have the problems, because you're not aligned with God's values. Here's what's not part of God's values. These 4 key categories: pride, power, pleasure, and wealth. So in your values, pride, status, financial status; power, like politics, being in control of people; pleasure, sex, drugs, alcohol, partying, all that stuff; or wealth, just having a big financial statement. Been down all those roads. And these are the 4 vanities of man that we have to deal with. And how to have a limitless life with God and experience God. It starts with aligning your values with God's values. And the key to his values start with, we have to give of ourselves, meaning to sacrifice. The grand delusion of life is that life is about what you want. This is where we get, and this is the struggle, is when we're young, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to school, I want to do whatever. I want to be, maybe it's you want to be a doctor, attorney, which is great. Maybe it's you want to be an athlete, whatever. I wanted to be a professional athlete, but that wasn't going to happen. And then it was like, okay, how can I make some money? And it was all about the money. But that's the delusion, when we make it all about things of this world. Life isn't about what we want. Life is about learning to give and sacrifice for others. Is God welcome in your life? As I said earlier, 40% of those under 30 years old identify as having no religious affiliation. What kind of person can have a loving relationship with? What kind of person can you have a loving relationship with? A person that understands what love is. Fewer and fewer know what love is. Now, I want you to think about this. We have divorce rates that have been steadily growing for decades. The abortion rates are really high. This concept of love is fewer and fewer people know what love is. And the reason is, where are you going to learn about love? They don't teach it in school. Very few people are going to church anymore. In the Catholic Church, 50 years ago, 75% of the members of the church went to Mass. Today, it's about 25%. And those are the people that are the members. Where do you learn this? You have to make the effort. Your greatest challenge in life is the voice of doubt in your head. And that voice never goes away. We hear that in our subconscious all the time. There's that negative voice of fear or doubt, and you could talk about, well, where the heck is that coming from? Is that me? Most people believe it's me. Then they believe it's themselves. They hear that negative, oh, you can't do this, you'll never make it. Well, if you believe in God, you got to believe in Satan. That voice of fear and doubt is paralyzing to people. So the definition of faith, I'm going to show you the definition of where I've taken the word faith and turned it into an acronym, because our whole journey is really about faith, and building this trust. First is focus, ambition, integrity, tenacity, and humility. See, faith, when we talk about faith, we want to focus on our path and where we're going with our life. Is everything will revolve around what we think about. So controlling your thoughts is critically important. If you do not control your thoughts, you're going to go all over the place. And this is really, really difficult. So concentrate on what you're thinking about. The focus is critical. Next is ambition. Having goals and big goals. Be ambitious. Have God-sized goals. Pursue things beyond what you believe is possible. This is one of the key ingredients to proving God. Is when you, and this is what made it so difficult. Is when I looked at what I thought was possible, I said, okay, well, I'm going to try to go way past that in whatever category. And what people didn't understand what I was doing, but what I was trying to do was prove God's existence. And this is one of the ways, is having these ambitious goals to say, okay, God says he's going to step up and help us. Well, will he really? Well, if you never test that, and if you never explore, if you never reach out, you'll never find out. Next is integrity. Be someone people can trust or rely on. How many people do you trust or rely on? Integrity is critically important. And then tenacity. Life is difficult. You will get pushed around. You will get knocked down. You have to get up and you have to keep pushing forward. See, be tenacious in pursuing life. See, life in and of itself is a massive blessing. It is the greatest blessing we ever receive. When you are blessed with life, do you take it for granted? Most people do. Using this opportunity, it is a short opportunity, it sure goes by fast, but use this opportunity, be tenacious. And lastly is humility. If you are humble, people will help you along the way. If you are not, they will do what they can to tear you down and make life harder for you. Humility is about elevating others' lives and making your life second to the others, and recognizing and being grateful for the gifts from God and what other people can bring in your life. And I got a lot of humility the hard way. So I've learned there's nothing more important than humility. All right, and to recap, it's focus. It's about ambition, integrity, tenacity, and humility. When your faith and you build this radical trust, you will become fearless in faith because you know it's not about this life. It's really more about the next life. This is all about preparation. See, all things are possible if you're willing to lose your life for God. Access this infinite intelligence. When you have access to infinite intelligence, it changes everything. It makes everything a lot easier because you start getting the answers to things that, because as I said before, we're really not that smart. And especially, I mean, if you compare our intellectual capabilities to God's, it's not even close. And access to the infinite power and understanding what it means to sacrifice of yourself. What are the depths of your sacrifice? Who are you sacrificing for right now? Are you sacrificing for anybody? Or is everything about you? You know, when I use the word sacrifice, I see people run to the hills. Nobody wants to hear the word sacrifice. All people want to talk about is what are they going to get? But the access to experiencing God is God cannot turn away from sacrifice, from self-sacrifice. And that's all through the Bible, is sacrifice. And he sacrificed his only son. That's the ultimate evidence. But all through the Bible there's evidence. And this is the path to experiencing God, is self-sacrifice. Trade your will for God's will. And that's what I'm talking about. And this was hard to do. But this is a prayer that I say every day, is I release my will to your will. Let your will be done. But here's the logic behind it. If God's smarter and more powerful and only wants love and good for me and those around me, why would I not want to trade for that? I'm not nearly as smart, I'm not nearly as powerful, and my tendencies are selfish. So my will kind of sucks compared to his will, right? So I just say, okay, you know what? Why are we so, I don't mean to be mean, but we're really stupid. Why would we want to hang on to our will when we can trade our will for his will? For his power, for his infinite intelligence, and for love and goodness. Why would we not want to trade that? To me, it's like a no-brainer. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Matthew 10:39. this is why. This is the process of gaining the wisdom to recognize that. See, selfishness, what Jesus is saying is, all he's saying is kill your selfishness, kill the selfish ego that we all have, the selfish ego that's destroying the country. Kill it and replace it with God's will. Become a conduit for God's love, his will. Now think about the word conduit. Be a conduit where his infinite intelligence, infinite power, infinite love passes through you to touch the people that you come in contact with. Become that conduit. And that's how you begin to experience life. You submit to God's will through what I call perpetual prayer. And I mean literally perpetual prayer. All day long. Get into a conversation and ask for that guidance. So what do you believe? According to your faith, be it unto you. This is my favorite verse in the Bible because it says, according to what you believe will come to pass. So what do you believe? Do you have the courage to prove God's existence? Do you have the courage to move in faith, in radical trust, to test the things I'm talking about? And I'm going to share with you a personal story, and I'm going to wrap up. I've had a number, I don't even know how many, but a number of supernatural, radical experiences. I told you about one with a heart attack. I'm going to share with you one more. And if you're a rejecter of God, I know this doesn't matter to you because it's too important to you to hold on to your pride and just do it your way, and that's okay. And I don't share this with you for any other reason than just to make you aware of what is possible. Because I've already reached the place, I've learned the hard way, that as much as I want people to know God as I've come to know God, as many people as I want to experience God as I've experienced God, the reality is I don't know what the percentage is, but it's an enormous number are just not because they're too locked into their eyes. But I'm going to share with you, to me, the most amazing experience that and there's been, probably a dozen, but the one with my heart was pretty miraculous, but this one to me was even more amazing. Here's what happened. I started reading about Thomas Aquinas. And Thomas Aquinas, if you're a Catholic, you know who Thomas Aquinas is. He's probably the greatest mind that's ever gone through the Catholic faith. He's kind of the Aristotle of the Catholic Church. He's just absolute genius. And reading Thomas Aquinas is very challenging. Sometimes I like to say it's kind of like reading a puzzle. I mean, you cannot read it fast. What he teaches, I call it the science of God. He breaks down God and faith at a level unlike anybody else I've read, and I've read a lot. I love Thomas Aquinas. Anyway, probably his most famous book, is he has, I think, hundreds. I mean, his writings are enormous, is the Summa Theologia. Okay, so I was reading through this book, and it's a really heavy-duty read. Anyway, he gets to what he calls the proof, 5 different ways to prove God. His proofs of God, this evidence. And I'm not going to go through those ways. You can look that up if you want, Thomas Aquinas' Proofs of God, and he'll explain scientifically how he breaks that down. Well, I was reading this in my Kindle. Okay, I got the Summa. You can download it for free. So I downloaded and started reading this. This was after my heart attack, which was 2007, probably about 2 or 3 years after that. And I got to this section and started reading the different proofs of God. And as I went through each one, it's really fascinating. But I got to one that was especially compelling, just mind-blowing to me. So I get to the section, it's called the Law of Alignment. Now here's how the Law of Alignment works. Is imagine you're driving a car. You get a brand new car, the car's aligned, you let go of the steering wheel, and it goes in perfect alignment, right? Now let's say you drive in that car and you hit a curb, or let's say your wife hits the curb, and she comes home And she says, that new car of ours, I was turning the corner, I cut the corner a little bit too tight, hit the curb, and it knocked the car out of alignment. And now it's pulling hard to the right. And you say, well, no problem. Let's just send it in. It's under warranty, and let's have them realign it. And she says, nah, we don't need to do that. I said, well, why not? Well, because I'm sure in time I'll hit another curb and put it back into perfect realignment. Now, what would you say to that? What are the odds that she's going to hit another curb exactly the same way and put those tires into perfect realignment? See, random perfect realignment happening even once is like, the odds of that are astronomical. But random perfect realignment every single day is impossible. And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. And this is what I was reading about. Is the random alignment. If we look at the perfect alignment for the earth, for us to survive, for animal life, plant life, fish, and so on, for us to survive, our planet operates on a massive number of ecosystems. There's all kinds of ecosystems, and we have gravity on top of that, and then you have the earth aligned with the moon and the sun and so on, and how the waves happen, and just how oxygen is created is another system. And so all of these ecosystems and the creation of our oxygen, did you know oxygen, the formula for oxygen, and I believe it's 21% of our atmosphere has to be oxygen. And it has to be exactly that number. If it goes too high above that, we die. If it goes too low, we die. And not just us, but all life. And I'm just talking one element. What has to happen for this planet every single day to create perfect alignment with oxygen in the atmosphere is nothing short of just miraculous. It's genius in creation, and it's miraculous that every single day the earth operates this way. And this is one of who knows how many different systems. And I said, when you look at all the ecosystems, from the insects to the animal life and so on, so I'm reading all about this in my Kindle, and the detail about how all these ecosystems and everything relies on this perfect law of alignment, that things can only survive if they are in perfect alignment. And so there's this law of alignment, and then that random perfect alignment, even happening once, is possible, but to have random perfect alignment over and over and over is just simply ludicrous. So anyway, I read that and I thought, wow, that's amazing. I spent about 45 minutes reading about this. So I close up my Kindle, go to sleep, set it aside. Go to work the next day, and I thought, that is the most compelling evidence, scientific evidence as far as how to prove scientifically, for those that are all about their eyes, that God's existence is there. So next day I get home and I said, I got to read this again. So I get my Kindle, turn it on, and if you have a Kindle, you can bookmark your page, right? And so I open up my Kindle, go to my Summa Theologia, and I go to my page, and there I'm right in there in the Thomas Aquinas' 5 Proofs of God, and I don't see the law of alignment. I thought, well, maybe my pages, maybe it's forward, so I just start scrolling forward through I go forward 20, 30 pages, 40 pages, couldn't find it. So I said, okay, well, I must have left it behind, and I'll just go back. So I start going back through, all the 5 proofs of God, and keep going back and keep going back. I go back another 30, 40 pages, and I couldn't find it. Then it occurred to me. I said, I know, you can do a word search. So on my little Kindle up in the corner, there's a little box where you can do a word search. So I typed in the search for the law of alignment. It's not in that book. I am telling you, for 45 minutes, I read in this book about the law of alignment and the details of this process. Now, some of you, like say, the God rejectors, go, okay, man, this guy's totally delusional. And that's okay. You know, some of you maybe go, what? Now, I can't explain how God does that. I think the way he does that is it was never in the book. I didn't actually see it on the pages. But what I saw was in my eyes. And if you will look at the tilma of Juan Diego, which is one of the most miraculous stories, and you can go on YouTube and look at the science of the tilma, and it talks about how in this tilma in the 1500s on the iris of the eye, you can see images. I think that's where those words were and why I read that and learned this. Now, the question, here's why I'm sharing this, because, whether you believe it or not, is up to you. But here's my point, and the point of this presentation about experiencing God. How many events like that would you have to where you go, okay, how many supernatural events like that? I've had these repeatedly, and I share it with you with the story of the heart. I had a cardiologist that I met when my wife and I were on a cruise. Just coincidentally, and nowadays I don't even know what coincidentally means anymore. I was sitting I went to get lunch, or I think it was breakfast actually. I went to get breakfast on this cruise. My wife, doesn't really like to eat breakfast. I got my little tray, sat down. This gal was across the table, and so I just, said hello. And I said, well, what do you do? She goes, well, I'm a cardiologist. I said, oh, really? I said, I know a lot about hearts. I said, I've had, the heart damage and, told her my whole story about the transplant list and so on. And at the end, I told her, I said, yeah, I said, my heart recovered. And I was taken off the heart transplant list, and my heart recovered to where I could operate normally and so on. And my ejection fraction went from 10 to 15 to over 50 and so on. And she looked at me baffled, and she said, she goes, not only have I never seen that, I've never heard of that. She goes, there's only two ways you come off the heart transplant list, either a new heart or dead. Now, I will leave you with this. I appreciate your time in watching this. To my family and children, this is a gesture of one of my sacrifices to God as far as, putting myself out there because I love God. I want my children to know just how real God is. I want you to know that the path to experiencing God is through sacrifice. And sacrifice just simply means to give of yourself. I'm Mark Prather, and I appreciate your time, and I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. God bless you.